Hi and welcome back to a new video. Today from Corsair, and I have to point out I'm always super glad how they set up all of this. We are actually at an exhibition, but they have this separate showroom where we can just film in peace. It's super quiet, which I enjoy, and I think you will also appreciate and enjoy that. We will first start with the entire PSU topic, because I think this is super nice what kind of innovations Corsair did this year. So we're starting with the AX1600i. This is a PSU a lot of people should be familiar with, at least the previous version. And what is different about this one compared to the previous version is that this is focused on making this as compact as possible while still having the ability of providing as much power as possible. So you can see, especially given that this is a 1600 watt PSU, this is quite compact. That is quite impressive. The connectors were moved to the side, and I will show you all of this again, close up soon. So I'm quickly moving over to the RM1200E. And this is impressive because they built in pin protect. Pin protect is for the entire 12 volt high power topic, which we covered too many times probably already, but we can see it reached the PSU manufacturers. And for this one, it doesn't have any USB-C connection or IQ link, but it has a built-in 12 volt higher power per pin protection, which is called the pin protect. So what it's doing, it's sensing the per pin current, and there is a built-in threshold set at 12 amps. And whenever you use this PSU and you would have a bad connection and it would exceed those 12 amps, the PSU will cut the sense pins. Now, when they introduced this to me, I was like, so why are they cutting the sense pins instead of just normal, typical OCP, shut it down, call it a day, right? It's safe. The problem with normal OCP is that you already have several OCP features in a PSU. And if it just shuts down, you wouldn't really know what caused it to shut down. Like, it could be any other overcurrent protection. And with the per pin protection, what it's doing is that it's cutting the sense pin. So imagine you're sitting in front of your PC, you're gaming, and you have a bad 12 volt high power connection. Exceeding 12 amps, screen goes blank because it's cutting the sense pins, and then the fan ramps up to 100%. So that is the indication that something is wrong on the 12 volt high power side. So if you're sitting there, that's why I want to make this absolutely clear. If you have this, screen goes blank, you hear the very loud noise of the fan of the PSU because it's spinning at 100%, then you know you have to check the 12 volt high power connection. Like unplug, plug again, that might solve the problem, or just replace the cable. But at least it's telling you before things should go bad. So that is really good. And then there is the Pin Protect Plus, which is the even better version of what is built in here, and that is on the HX1000i. And because this one has IQ Link and USB-C connection, you can not only have protection but also monitor it at the same time. So you would connect this to your PC and then use IQ software, and there you can actually see what's going on. So similar like on a WireView Pro 2, you can see the per pin current that is going over the 12 volt high power connector. And then you can also set your own thresholds. Like here it's baked in that it's always the 12 amps, which should protect it, that's good. But here, for example, if you use, let's say, a 5070 Ti, you want to have a lower threshold. Instead of 12 amps, you can set it to 8 amps, for example, because just percentage-wise on a 5070 Ti, that would be already kind of odd. So that's what you could do with this one. And then you can also set features like automated shutdown. That is really cool. I'm very glad to see that this entire topic is now moving in a good direction, that it's also going from the PSU side, which is where it starts, right? And that's, I think that's perfect. And especially with this solution, where you do not only have the protection, but you can also monitor it. You can check yourself if everything is fine. And if things go bad, you can also set yourself, for example, auto shutdown.
You are looking for a real alternative to Google Drive or Dropbox with European data privacy standards? Then take a look at Hetzner's Storage Share. Based on Nextcloud, it lets you securely share files, collaborate on documents, and organize appointments with the integrated calendar. Whether you use a laptop, smartphone, or browser, your files are always available. GDPR compliant, flexible, with no minimum contract term and no cancellation period. You'll find the link to Hetzner Storage Share in the video description. New customers can save $20 with the code DERBAUER20.
Now the AX1600i unfortunately does not have the per pin power protection. But the reason for this is quite simple, because you don't make these kind of products overnight. It takes a lot of time to develop these and also certify, and at that point this was just already finished, and that's why the per pin protection did not make it into this PSU. But this is mainly also focused on overclockers, which might not even want to use this kind of protection feature, and that's also what you can see here. It is targeted towards very high power consumption. For example, if you also run 5090 Lightning and you need dual 12-volt high power, then this PSU can provide that. The RM1200E is not using shift technology, which means that you have this in, I would say, the conventional cable orientation. Whereas if you look at the AX1600i or also at this HX1000i, this is using shift. So they have the cable orientation on the side, also using those kind of special, more space-saving connectors on the side that I'm sure you're familiar with. And what I especially like about this one is because it's see-through. It's what we saw already last year at Computex. And I'm super glad that this actually made it as a product. You can see through the PCB, and you can also see how much work they put into making the inside of the PSU look nice with, for example, the white PCBs that you can see all around. And also, I know, but it's an RGB fan. You might think, why do I need an RGB fan in a PSU? Well, it's just probably the reason why you would buy this one, because in a lot of cases these days, you can also see the PSU, and then you might want your PSU to look nice. So that's why you have all of this. And then the RGB fan can either shine upwards, for example, onto the GPU, depending on the case, or downwards onto the table. Going over to the AIO topic, and I have to be honest that in the past this was rather boring, because all that changed in the previous years is you have another screen, you have a bit more RGB there, and that's basically it. And that's why I was actually surprised what kind of innovations Corsair were doing here, and we're actually talking about innovation. I also want to make clear that especially in the cooling segment, no matter if it's air cooling, custom water cooling, AIO cooling, everything is already optimized to the limit. You can't expect optimization of like 5 degrees Celsius anymore these days, because everything is already super optimized. That's why it's even more surprising what kind of changes Corsair applied to the AIO. So we're talking mainly about the Titan 2, and this is the normal version. What they did here is going for noise optimization. So in your normal system, of course, if you have a recent AMD CPU and you run Cinebench, it can pull like 200 or 250 watts, depending on your CPU. But that is a scenario you would typically not have when you're doing any kind of normal gaming workload. Then your typical AMD CPU, it will consume something between, I would say, 80 to 120 watts. That's probably the more realistic wattage that you would occur. And for most of the AIOs, especially in the past, they were using a rather tight fin density to just, in theory, be able to dissipate as much heat as possible. But it also means that you always need a very strong fan to be able to push air through. So you can have very high heat dissipation, but it requires a strong fan. And a strong fan also means that it has to run at a high RPM to push the air through, which is nice if you need that. But in most of the cases, it will be worse for you than this. So they reduced the fin density to theoretically just open up the radiator a little bit more, which allows the fans to easily push the air through, which means the fans can just spin at a lower RPM in the typical operational range. So if you run, as I said before, a gaming scenario, then this will just be better for you. It will maybe not be as good if you just try to dissipate as much heat as possible for like benchmarking, but I think most of the people don't need that. And for your typical normal operation gaming, this is very good optimization. It will just make your life better for noise reasons. And then we're going over to the Ultra version. So this is a normal 25mm radiator, and this is the thick boy. So they went for a 40mm radiator, and if you just see it like that, you're like, okay, that's just a 40mm radiator. But what they did is they stacked two slim radiators on top. So if I just look through from the side here, you can actually see through because it's two slim radiators stacked. And they are stacked with a different fin density. And already that tells you that they definitely spent a lot of time investigating and testing this. They also said they came up with this concept years ago, but it was at that time simply not possible to manufacture this idea. And now they made it possible to manufacture it, and this improves the thermals of about 0.7 degrees over just having a normal 40mm radiator. And if you're now thinking, hey, 0.7 degrees, why are you even doing that? In the cooling industry, that is a lot, especially if you're in the same size limit. Then this is actually quite impressive, and that's what I meant. I was absolutely surprised to see that there's still somewhat of an innovation in this AIO cooling market. So if you're not like this, you need like normal gaming with normal heat dissipation, then you can go for this one. But if you have any kind of requirement for dissipating more heat, like if you need rendering or anything, and you're running those 250 watts constantly, then this will give you better performance, better temperatures at a lower noise level. So that is really cool to see. Did not expect to see 2 stacked radiators because I remember this from like custom water cooling times when people were experimenting with these kind of things, and it was typically worse. And then seeing this and it's actually better is pretty nice. But I think that's also because of the fact that they can fully customize this in the development time, and having 2 radiators with 2 different fin densities, that is probably what's also giving the advantage here. Of course, like in the past, those AIOs are available with different pump heads, so you can have this pretty simple one, or even go for an LCD screen if you want to. I didn't want to talk about that too much because it's not that special to me. Unlike the thermal design, you can see this again here. You can see through. There you can see that it's actually 2 radiators stacked. And again, one is 12 and the other one is 14 FPI. Corsair is showing multiple different cases here at Computex, but I decided to only feature this one because I think this is truly special. It's the Warthog, which is, as you probably know, the plane, the A-10 plane that has this Gatling minigun in front, a pretty famous plane. That's where the design is coming from. And Corsair already had a kind of similar style case in the past, the C-70 Vengeance, which was, I think, design-wise like an ammo box. So you had these kind of levers on the top. And this is just absolutely more crazy style of design, like military-wise. You might like or dislike this military style design. There is also a black version that doesn't look as much military if you don't like it. But I think this is pretty unique in the way it looks like, and just overall the design, everything fits perfectly together. For example, if you look at those handles on top, if you would just throw these handles on a normal case, it would just look odd. It would look weird. But on this one, it kind of fits for whatever reason. Same thing for this 3D mesh in front and top. If you would have normal mesh panels on here, I think it would not look as nice. It would make it look more like a normal PC case, and this just completely different for whatever reason. Then you have those small features like you might notice from planes where it's like remove before flight and then it's remove before build. It's plugged into the USB-C connector in front. Then some neatly executed buttons on the bottom, like power and reset. Reset is hidden underneath this tiny switch thing, so you can't accidentally press it. Then on the right there is a light button. So on the back there's a light built in which will shine on the I/O area. And I'm not sure how helpful this is, but it's just kind of cool, I think. And then if we open this, if we remove this dust filter in front, there are 2 200mm fans underneath. And that's also kind of unique because that's not a standard fan size. That's probably also why they don't, at least for now, offer these fans standalone, because in most cases you just can't fit them. But here you have 2 of them, and you can just see by the sheer size they can just move a lot of air through the case at a rather low RPM, which will also then again keep the noise level low. Just rotating this again so you can get an impression, hopefully similar as I have it here. Just really, really cool design. I also like the price structure of this case for what you're getting. I think this is super fair. Without any fans, you would pay about $170. With the dual 200mm fans in front and a single 140mm fan in the back, it would cost about $200. And I think it's a very special case, and I would have expected a much higher price. Availability of this is going to be availability of this is going to be mid-August, similar as the Titan 2 AIO. Unlike the Ultra version, which will be available in Q4, similar as the high-end PSUs will also be in Q4. Hope you enjoyed this video. See you next time. Bye-bye.